ויהי נועם אדוני אלינו עלינו מעשה יהיה אדוני עלינו מעשה יהיה אדוני הוא ויהי נועם אדוני אלינו עלינו מעשה יהיה אדוני עלינו מעשה יהיה אדוני הוא לעילוי נשמת יהודה אריאל לייב בן משה ורבקה, לעילוי נשמת רחל בת שרה, לעילוי נשמת אהרון בן שלמה, רבי אהרון שלמה גוצי. So today is our last session about this Kabbalistic Metalearning, and we are going to deal a bit more with the elephant which is in the house. You know, that is, what is the actual practice? You know, the elephant in the house, in the sense that, you know, it's this whole practice and this whole way of doing it is actually, when you look at the sources, it's like big like an elephant. Only that somehow we ignored him. We found a way to like put him to sleep or something, you know. And then we found a room which was big enough, and we said this room is a closet, and you know, and everything else. You know. We found ourselves all kind of excuses. And you know, we gave him the compost to eat, and you know, and everything. So we looked previous times, at the complexity and the beauty of the pardes, of the orchard, of this structure, which actually shouldn't be taken for granted as being this pshat, remez, drush, sod. Because as we saw, the original source for this is actually from Zohar Chadash in the Tikkunim, which talked about pshat, not remez, raya. Raya means like a proof, an argument about things. And then, of course, you had the matter of the drush and the sod. But from where did the remez idea come from? Well, it came from the Sabba Mishpatim, which is more core Zohar than any Zohar. And we saw that the Sabba Mishpatim looked at it quite differently than what we assume today it is. And when we know the importance which is given by our sages, and in particular by Ha'eloki Rabbi Yitzchak, by Diari, we realize that we have to somehow instill in our learning and our practice the sense of what Diari was teaching from his own master, Rabbi Abba Saba. When I say his own master, it's because, you know, we have this tradition that Diari was on the island of Rawda on the Nile for 7 years. You know, island of Rawda is an amazing place. That's where you have the Nileometer, because it was measuring the Nile over very many years. Now our Muslim cousins, being what they are, you know, and you know, maybe we protected from them, have this thing where measures were taken on the island of Rawda for many years. But they decided that any measurement before, you know, we'll call him Mahmoud, any measurement before him weren't supposed to exist. You know, that's their view of history. And so they were all, erased, cancelled, one after the other. But it's on this very island where you have this Nileometer that we've had this extraordinary revelation, daily revelation, which is called Gilui El-Yahu Hanavi Zachor Tov. Now, if you look in the first pages of Sha'ar HaKodesh, you'll see that when Diari talks about Esek Torah, which is, you know, what we're talking about now, he says that Esek Torah, the real one, should correspond to some Hid Galut, he says. That is, it should correspond to some revelation. Now, not revelation in your mind, something which is being revealed, an idea. No, it's actual revelation. He actually gives the pasuk, you know, about Avraham Avinu lifting his eyes and he saw. And he says, this is this type of revelation. He says, because that's what the real Esek Torah is about. And then he gives examples. And you can see that the example he gives is this what's called generically, you know, in a generic way, it's called Gilui El-Yahu Hanavi. But the prime example, it says, is the the Sabba Mishpatim. That's what he says himself in Shaarei HaKodesh. So in other words, there's a tradition, and that was the tradition of my master. He himself spent many years when he was a boy on the island of Rawda.
Your master?
My master. He was born in Alexandria.
Wow.
Spent many years. He lost his father age 5. Spent many years on the island of Rawda, and he was meditating there. And he said that this revelation that the Ari had on the island of Rawda was really Rabbi Abba Sabba. And that's the very reason why the Sabba Mishpatim is cited throughout Kitvei Ari.
What year was Rabbi Sabba?
Rabbi Abba Sabba? Rabbi Abba Sabba is a revelation.
No.
See, there is a Tanaic expression, or you could call it a Tanaic consciousness, and which is called Rabbi Abba Sabba. And then you have the Amora, Rabbi Abba Sabba the Amora. But that comes much later, and it's in Bavel. It's the famous colleague of Abaye.
It's the same.
So it's the same letters. And I mean, no, of Rav, I'm sorry. And it's the Ari who said in Shari Gulim that Rabbi Abba Sabba, these are the same letters as Abaye, so that he was a Gilgul of Abaye. Now, Rabbi Abba Sabba, the Amora, was obviously an Amora, so he was born of a mother. On the other hand, Rabbi Abba Sabba, the Tana, the Ari says that he grew up in Atik Yomin, however you can interpret that. So, what is the way of looking at the Pardes as taught by the Sabba Mishpatim? He starts by Remez, because you see, everything is about getting a sense of the clues that Oraita makes known to you, shows to you, that is actually reveals to you in a fleeting manner. So, it's just like it's a very little instant, and it's only for you to see. And that's the point which is called Remez. And again, in Zohar Chadash, in the actual source of understanding Pardes as Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod, this original source in Zohar Chadash never said Resh as Remez, but as Raya, which meant a proof. So in other words, this idea of Remez comes from the Sabba Mishpatim. This is the Torah of the Sabba Mishpatim, only. So he starts with, you have a clue. There's a clue given, a hint, a part of herself that she lets you see. And then it goes drasha. Now, part of drasha, the Sabba Mishpatim says that actually it's still a parurta, it's still a fake curtain. It's only at the next stage, which is what he calls Haggadah. Not with Aleph, though you have to know that the Aramaic of Haggadah with Aleph is actually the Aramaic of the Hebrew Haggadah with a Hey. Many people today make differences of saying, Haggadah with an Aleph or Haggadah with a Hey. It's the Aramaic or it's Hebrew, however you want it. And why people do that? Because you see, they've made the term Haggadah with an Aleph a matter of, homiletic expressions of something which is more about somehow a legend almost. Things which aren't, they want to do it as opposed to halachic. But this is a very modern expression of things.
Yeah, it's modern.
This is a very modern, I'll call it schizophrenia, where you don't want to embrace the Torah as a whole, so you divide it, and you say, well, it's not this, it's that, you wanted that. But the Torah is whole, it's one Torah. It's never been supposed to be divided like that. Or it's like you like halacha, but you don't like Haggadah, You like Haggadah, but you don't like halacha. What is this? There's no such thing. Now, of course, there's different parts in the Gemara, in the Shara Mitzvot itself, it expresses that have different levels it corresponds to. But it's not a matter of liking this or disliking that. So what is the Haggadah part? The Haggadah part is that she doesn't show to you anymore a glimpse of this or that. This time it's not just a little remez. It's not that she gives you a glimpse of herself. She actually narrates something to you. That's what the term Haggadah, like Lashon, the same like the Magid part in the Haggadah of Pesach, right? The Magid part of the Haggadah of Pesach is the heart of the Haggadah. Why? Because you recount, you actually give back a whole, narration. You actually remember all that was, and you give back the story, the whole story of of Pesach and of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's what it is. So it goes from the difference between Oraita giving you a hint of something, giving you a glimpse of something, to actually narrating to you a whole thing, to actually expressing to you something. Now, the Sabbat Mishpatim says, how does it go? How does it actually take place? It takes place one thing which is called chida, a riddle. A riddle. And we saw that those 4 letters really didn't have the samer there, because after that, you have like the very high level where she uncovers her face, and you actually see her face to face. And there she reveals to you, and it says, all the secrets. And he uses the term razin, because it's in Aramaic. But there is really no place for the samer of the sod, though of course in Hebrew we would say raz, we would say sod. And our tradition is that if you have those 4 letters, which are really the 4 letters of hipared me'alai, like go off me, that Avraham tells to Lot. And of course, for that, as I already said, you would need to learn Shara Psukim on those Psukim, etc. There's a lot to learn here, but these are the letters that make a cycle. As you go from Remez, to a hint from her, to a drasha, which is really a sense, but it's a sense through this thick curtain. And then the veil becomes thinner and thinner, and it's this Haggadah, those riddles, where she actually tells you, not just like a word, not just like a little idea, like a thing. There's actually a whole riddle that goes with it. But then it helps you to get back a sense of, if you get the higher level of the Razin, but in any way, you get back a sense of the Pshat. That's where you've had, because each and every one of those elements, whether it's the Remez, whether it's the Drush, whether it's the Haggadah, it's all for you to actually get an actual relation and sense of the Pshat, right? So it actually cycles back. And that's the very reason of the order of the letters, Hipared. And as we saw last time, and I'll finish just my introduction this way, is that the He, to become a Samech, from the 5 to become 60, it needs 55. And that 55 is the Tikkun that the Ari calls Tikkun Nun He, which is the Tikkun of Gawa V'Letsanut, the Tikkun of pride and mockery, which is what we too easily reach when we think we have a sense of Torah. And then nothing much is possible. But in practice, what would we do? So it's very clear from Shara Mitzvot that the pay of the Pshat is actually the Mikra. When we say Mikra, it means 2 different things. It means the psukim of the Torah that change each and every day, that evolves from day to day. Each and every day, it's a different story. As we said again, first day of the week, 6 first psukim. Second day, 4 psukim. Third, today, 5 subsequent psukim. Fourth day, 6. Fifth day, 5. The night from first day to Friday, which is called Leil Shishi. 26 more. Okay. By the way, last Leil Shishi, what was it? It was Shavuot. Yeah. And one of the mistakes not to do on this last Leil Shavuot was to engage with all those psukim from Tikkun Leil Shavuot and forget about the 26 psukim of Parashat Naso. That's like the most ridiculous thing to do. Why? Because you have first an obligation, you have first something where you relate to her, and then you have the thing where, you've had a tradition of doing a tikkun. But first you relate to her, and on that night, that's what you were supposed to take.
It's from the first from the first pasuk to the 20s.
No, the first. What we explained is that Shara Mitzvot says the first 5 days of the week, you take the first 26 psukim, and then on Leil Shishi, which is a night from Thursday to Friday, you take the 26 psukim after that. Okay. So together you've had 52, like Ben. You've had 52 psukim when you reach Friday morning. at the point you reach Shacharit of
Every week, or just we're talking about Nassau?
no, every week.
Every week.
That's the day every week. So you have this thing that changes every day, and that is point of the P, of the Pshat, of what we call Mikra. Then you have the psukim that you're going to relate to in Nevim and Ketuvim. And that, pay attention, that Shah Mitzvot, and of course we didn't have time to actually look at the whole of Shah Mitzvot, but on Parashat Vayet Hanan. But I invite you to do so if you doubt what I just said now, what I'm going to say now. But the only thing that has a necessity to change are the psukim of the Torah. You could, and actually I believe, and that was a tradition of my master, you should keep the same psukim in Nevim and Ketuvim as long as you have not profoundly related to them. And we are going to see an example of that because we're going to build a base for our practice. And then you have the part which is called Remez, which is all about the Mishnah. It's all about this neshama part of your learning, which is something which should be done in a very different way than the way you do Talmud. You see, we hear about this practice that many had here in Tzfat, and we're not certain actually that the Ari taught that to Rabbi Chaim Vital, but we know that Rabbi Chaim Vital practiced it. Of enclothing yourself in a talit, wrapping yourself in a talit, taking a Mishnah, and repeating the Mishnah. Taking the Mishnah, sometimes the Mishnah statement is like one sentence. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to take a whole full Mishnah. And what's a Mishnah, by the way? It's like a Mishnah can be any sentence from Mishnah. It doesn't have to be, something that has been separated by commentaries of the Gemara. No, you can take just one sentence of the Mishnah, a few words that make a whole, and he would repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it till he would come to a point where the Tana would start talking from his mouth. And that was a very dear practice here in Tzfat. And this repeating of Mishnayot is that point that we call Remez.
Are you suggesting that we are able today in this year to be able to do that sort of thing?
Of course we are. The question is, how are we ready for the result? But
You repeat it as a mantra, you mean? You repeat it as a quantum?
Yes, you repeat it. That's what it means, Tana. That's what it means, Tana. When a sage just says Tana, it means what? Repeat. It was repeated. Tanu, they repeated. That's what they do. And what it means that the term Mishnah. The term Mishnah comes from the root Shin Nun He, which is the same as Shana. But why is a year called Shana? Because it repeats itself. Because every year you have another Shana. That's the way it is, That's what Mishnah was about.
Could you share with us, how long would they repeat that sentence for, typically?
As long as they didn't experience something. They would engage with it. And, some may find this too mystical for them, and I can understand or don't understand, but that's not the matter. The matter is that, what's wrong in doing that? Can anyone tell me what in the world can be wrong in taking a Mishnah and repeating it? You know what I mean? That was the original meaning of what a Mishnah is. That's what, in fact, my master was saying, what does it mean, Tanu Rabbanan? Each time you have in the Gemara, what does it mean, Tanu Rabbanan? It means that the Amoraim were taking this very Mishnah they're going to talk about, this Mishnaic expression, whether, it was a Baraita, whether it was a Sefta, or however, you have different expressions for that. But in essence, what they were doing is they were taking this statement, which had been put to written, in written form, because though it was oral Torah, since Rabbi Yehuda and Nasi, we actually put in a written form the Mishnah. So they would take that statement, and they would repeat it, till they have access to the Tanaic consciousness, which is this Tana talking with them. And at that point, they were able to express what they expressed in the Gemara. That's what Tanu Rabbanan meant.
It's almost as if you have to let go of your own consciousness
Yes, but that's why you repeat. When you start to repeating something, you start to kind of lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Now, after they've done that, they would go, and that's a tradition about the Dalet of Drasha. You have to go to a Gemara. Now, the Ari very clearly says in Shara Mitzvot that you cannot take a part of Gemara which isn't as a following, as an expression, as a commentary of the Mishnah. That's one of the failures of today's Sefer Chok Lisrael, is that it contradicts directly what the Ari said and what he said not to do. Is that today's Chok Lisrael will have a Mishnah and will have a Gemara that follows, and most of the times the Gemara that follows has nothing to do with the Mishnah which was given before. And that is wrong. And not only that, by doing that, you have not accomplished Kavata Itim LaTorah. As simple as that.
Not accomplished what?
Kavata Itim LaTorah. Did you set aside a point times for Torah? You simply have not accomplished it. So in other words, you wasted a lot of time in one Sefer called Chok Lisrael. That's what you've done. So you need to have this built for you. And just like for the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the part of Mikra, there isn't any necessity, it's actually detrimental to change it every day. Why? Because what you will have, such long learning, and you have many other things to do in your day, by the end, will you actually relate to it deeply? No. Will you have done anything about repeating that Mishnah? Obviously not. If you can't repeat it inside one day, just make sure that every day you said the same Mishnah, so it repeats on itself. That's what a Mishnah was supposed to be. So your Gemara is supposed to be a continuation of your Mishnah. But you see, by the end, all of this, as we said, should be as remazim, as something which continues the remazik process, the hinting process that Oraita has for you. Because it goes from giving you a little bit to see a little bit of yourself. And if you don't know what we're talking about, just go look. We have a beautiful shiur on a parable, which was done on Lag LaOmer. She shows a bit of herself. Then it's actually through, a thicker curtain, which is really the Gemara. Then after that, it actually can go that she narrates something to you. Now, of course, can we imagine that everyone who's going to use this is going to reach just after the Gemara and the Torah Oraita herself is starting to narrate something to him? Well, it would be hopeful, it would be wishable, it would be like there's potentiality for it, etc. But that is a beautiful practice I'm going to tell you about. That at the very beginning of the revelation of Rabbi Abba Saba to Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chia, he actually gives them those very riddles, examples of the riddles that you could hear from Oraita. And so in the same way that, as we said, the letters Hipared, right, starts with the He, for the He for Agadah, what we'll have in actual practice is that we will take progressively some of the riddles that were given by Rabbi Abba Saba. And you will understand why it's actually very fitting with all that we actually learned. You see, if you listen to this riddle, it's not for you to understand. You see, one of our problems is our sechel. That's what Rabbi Abba Saba says. He says, what is, this thing of men? He says, they actually are mixing up things, mixing up wisdom because of their sechel. He says, from too much intellect, too much sense of things, they're actually losing a sense of chokhmah, of wisdom. So here is this first hida, riddle. Man hu nehasha defarach ba'uvira wa azil beferuda uven kach itnayecha lechad nemala deshachiv ben shinoi sharei behibura uesiyem bepiruda. Which means, like translated just on the spot. What is, or you could say, actually better to say it like that, I guess. Who is, what is this snake which flies in the air, moves in separation, and between this and that, comfortably is an ant that lies between his teeth. It starts in union and it ends in separation.
An ant?
Yes, an ant. And you see, what is this made for? This is made to break your sechel at the beginning, because you know that you have no idea what he's talking about. You know what I mean? And that's how you have to start with anything to do with Rawda. You have to break that sechel of yours. And you have to use that riddle, and that's the term of hiparet. The he will be for Haggadah, which is here for Chida, as taught by Sabba Mishpatim. The resh, the pei will be for the psukim, and in particular, the ever-changing psukim in the Torah, but then the psukim that we'll see in Nevi'im and Ketuvim. Then the resh for some Tanaic expression, consciousness about it, which is in the Mishnah. And then the Dalet for the Gemara. And you'll cycle on it. And you see, so we have, let's say we have Chidot here. You know, there is a few more, but we're not going to do that now. I mean, you will see in actual practice, for the ones who will want to come and do a Chok Israel here, of the actual Chok Israel as taught by Thierry, then, you'll see how this can unfold. But you have a first example of a Chida. Beautiful Chida, And so we're going to take a text, an extraordinary sugya actually, in Maseret Eruvin. And you might tell me, well, why are we going to take Maseret Eruvin there and as the base of our learning? Well, don't forget, we started with Maseret Shabbat in Daf Lamed Aleph, which talked about the partitioning in 6 entities of your time in the week. Like Sheshet Yamin, etc. I don't have to say more. And he says that the point which is called Kavata Etim La Torah, it corresponds in the order of the Mishnayot, it corresponds to Moed. Right? Now, Maseret Eruvin is part of Moed. So in that, we're in perfect coherence with what we learned from the first shiur. Now, Maseret Eruvin has this beautiful set of riddles. Because you should know that at the beginning, anyone who really wants to relate to this whole matter of Chok Israel should have his Gemara leading him to riddles. And so at the beginning, we will start, as we said, this Hipared structure, He, Pe, Resh, Dalet, cycles back to the He, Pe, Resh, Dalet, etc. And so it's for us, we will start with just a riddle of the Sabbath Mishpatim, and then we need psukim from Nevi'im and Ketuvim. Well, we have that. But you see, what we're going to see now is the older tradition to the whole idea of, in a way, Pardes, of this seeing the Torah as 4 levels. And this was originally in Maseret Eruvin. And if we would not do that, we would not make this complete. It says, Amar Chizda Darish Mari Barmar. So, and he says Darish, so it's like Drush, okay? So if you don't believe me that counts as Drush, that counts as, as the part which is Gemara, for the let of Drush, then you don't believe the Gemara, Then, get out of here. So, Darish Mari Barmar expounded. And what he says, My dirtiv lechol tichla ra'iti ketz rechava mitzvatecha meod. Very interesting, because there's between the rechava, ketz and rechava, there's no wav, there's no psik, nothing. And the first meaning of it is of saying to every goal, in English, Yiddish, you would say, to every tachlis, every tichla, to every goal, every purpose. Raiti ketz, I saw an end. Here, in Shotestein, it translates as limit, but it's really an end. And then it continues, it says, Rehava mitzvatecha me'od. Very broad is your mitzvah. Davar ze amaro David, olo persho. David expressed this, said that, but he did not comment on it, he did not explain it. Amaro Yov, olo persho. This idea of this vastness of Torah, Yov mentioned it, but did not explain it or really define it. Amaro Yeheskel, Welo Pershu. Adonenu Hanavi Yeheskel expressed it, mentioned it, but did not really define it. Ad Sheba Adonenu Hanavi Zecharia ben Ido Hanavi. Because we learned from Maseret Megillah that if his father was also cited, it means that his father was also a Navi. So Zecharia ben Ido Ufersho, but he defined it. He expressed it. So the Gemara, fortunately, it doesn't leave us just like that, without any evidence for this. He actually tells us what it is. It tells us Amaro David Welo Persho Dirtiv. That's using the very pasuk that we already cited. Lechol Tichla Ra'iti Ketz Rechava Mitzvatecha Meod. Okay, already explained the pasuk. Amaro Yov Velo Pershu Dirtiv. When did he actually mention it, but did not explain it? When he said Aruka Me'eretz Mida Urechava Mini Yam. Again, when we say Yov said, we have this tradition which was confirmed and reinforced by Diari, that Sefer Yov is really the Sefer where Moshe Rabbeinu hid most of his secrets. Yes, that it's actually Moshe Rabbeinu who wrote Sefer Yov, but it's called Al-Shem Yov. In fact, Yov, the whole discussion in the Gemara, who was Yov? Yov could be Yitro, so it could be the father-in-law of Moshe. But who actually wrote Sefer Yov? A tradition says it's Moshe. And then that's why you have so many words in Sefer Yov that appear nowhere else than in Sefer Yov. Very hard to understand. But how can we give a little meaning to this pasuk? At least the way it's understood in this Gemara. He says, longer than the earth is its measure. Measure of what? Of Torah. So this time it's not about just how broad it is. So it's not just the length, because he adds urechava miniyam, but now he's also adding a second dimension, because he's saying, and she's wider than the seas. You see, David gave you a unidimensional idea of the vastness of Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Yov gives you this second dimension. Then Yeheskel, Adonenu Hanavi Yeheskel, Amaro Yeheskel Welo Persho, Dirtiv, as it says, Wayifros Ota Lefanai. Then he spread it out, what? The Torah. He spread it out before me. Vehi Ketuva, Panim Olahor. So now it's not that just she spread in front of me like on a plane, two dimensions, but there is panim ve'ahor. So there are three dimensions now, because there's actual depth. Panim ve'ahor. Ve'katuv eleha kinim wahege wahi. Terms that you think you understand, but that you don't understand. And a lot of it is because of modern Hebrew, Because what the Navi calls him kinim is what we call in modern Hebrew kinot, And some of that is because people want to make differences with differences of plurals, like between olamim and olamot, things like that. Things that never existed before, never existed before, That is, didn't make difference between worlds and ages. It was just the same thing. You just had to wrap your hand around it. It's the dialectics of understanding that a long age is a world, and the world is an age. You had to understand that. And so, of course, today one says olamot to mean worlds and olamim to mean ages. But this is just like modern grammatical, shenanigan. There's nothing profound about it. Then the Gemara explains the matter. He says, kinim, that are really what people call today kinot, like lamentations. He says, zo pur anut shel tzadikim ba'olam hazeh. This is the travails, the hardships of tzadikim in this world. Wechen hu omer, who is who? Who is who? Adonai Navi Cheskel, because he's the one who actually used those very terms, right? Of kinim, hege, wahi. He says, kinahi wekonenuha. It is lamentation, and they shall lament it. Wahege, hege is very, very fascinating term. If you look at the root hegimel he, it really is about contemplating something. It's really, that's, you have all kind of usages of that root. Yes, but it originally it's about keeping something in your mouth and actually like chewing on it. But it goes much more than that. It goes into a whole idea of murmuring. And then it goes even into, and it's used in the Mishnah, and it's been used in the Gemara about, again, when one says that Haga Beshem, what does it mean? That's what it means. He uttered the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's more than just saying it. It's a whole contemplation that goes with it. But here, used by Adonai Navi Cheskel, it means rejoicing. Zo matan seharan shel tzadikim latid lavo. We saw the difficulty of the tzadikim in this world, and now you have obviously their recompense, their salary in the world, in the becoming. And it says, "Wechen hu omer ale higayon bechinor." And this is, who says that? David HaMelech. And pay attention, we already have two psukim. One from Nevi'im and one from Ketuvim. In relation to our subject about the vastness of Torah and how we relate to it at different levels. Wahi, and so for the Englishman that you are, W-O-E, how will you pronounce this? W-O-E, how would you pronounce this?
Whoa.
Whoa, okay. Right. Whoa. So, Wahi, and he says, Zohi pur anu shel reshaim le'atid lavo. This is the trials, the difficulties, the hardships of the reshaim in the world, in the becoming. V'chen hu omer, huwa al huwa tavo. Happening, of course, calamitous, happening upon calamity will come, Racham al-Islam. Ad sheba Zecharia ben Ido Ufershu. Till came Adonai Navi Zecharia. And he actually explained it, he defined it. So what did we see till now? We saw David HaMelech, which tells you vastness of Torah is about one dimension. This is how broad is your Torah, okay? Right? Typically, like, my son was asking me a few days ago, how much do you love me? And I was telling him like that. And then I realized I was thinking, because I was thinking even about the Torah, I was thinking, yes, that's the David HaMelech expression. I was telling it to my wife. I just did it like David HaMelech way, like I love you like that, like vast, broad, and it's just like one dimension. Then after that, the higher level is obviously there with Moshe. There's a lot of secrets in that. Tikkun HaZohar tells you that the term Adam that the Aleph is for Adam, it starts with that. And then the Dalet is for David, and the Mem. So you have two expressions. You have one is zero about Mashiach, like the very end expression of of humanity, but one which is about saying it's Moshe, and by the end, it's one and the same as the saying of like Moshe Rabbeinu returning to us as Mashiach. So Moshe, what did he do in Sefer Yov? He actually said, look, you have a certain length, but you also have the wideness of the sea. So he gave it this two-dimensional. It's the surface at that point. And then we saw that Adonenu Hanavi Yecheskel actually went the next level, which is it's not really a surface, but it has two sides. So there's obviously some type of depth, okay? So some third dimension of it. But Zecharia ben Iddo, here's what he said. He says, Wayomer Elai, Ma ata roeh? And he said to me, what do you see? Waomar. And I said, Ani roeh Megillah Afa. And again, one of those misunderstandings of modern Hebrew, my master, just for a little story, my master used to tell me this thing. He said, you had a great chance, the same chance I had about the Hebrew. I was puzzled. What do you mean by that? And that applies for a lot of people here as we even speak English. So that's why I'm saying it. And he said, well, you see, I was born, Hebrew wasn't my mother tongue. Egyptian Arabic was his mother tongue. And he said, the same thing with you. You weren't born with Hebrew as your mother tongue. So you know what chance it is for you and for me? Is that Hebrew will always be Lashon HaKodesh. Hebrew will always be a holy language. In the original sense of it. Because you see, Kodesh, as defined by our sages, and foremost by Rashi, is about being separated. It is separated from your experience. It is separated from the basically the vulgarity of lower life. And that's why, I've had the chance of learning with quite a few people in my life, and I've seen great individuals that can take a profound text, and because Hebrew is very easy for them, they fly on the text. But they see nothing there. Nothing. Because Hebrew flies for them, but it's just like, see nothing. They can't relate with the difficulty with which you relate to a text in Hebrew. But that difficulty is an extraordinary chance. And I know that one of the reasons also that giving you those elements about the Chok Lisrael is out of compassion, but out of love for truth. And there is no need for your Chok Lisrael to be a never-ending thing that you can never finish in a week. There's something which you can actually, which is quite short, quite right to the point, straightforward, but that you can actually relate to very deeply, and that will teach you actual Hebrew. You understand? That will, give you a profound sense, of Hebrew. And so he says, Ani roeh Megillah Afa. So it's not that he sees a flying Megillah, No. Is that he sees a folded Megillah. And it says, Arka 20 be'ama, urechava 10 ba'ama. Again, that's for modern Hebrew, is put in the bin. Okay, is that in modern Hebrew? How would you say that? You would say number of amot, right? Yes. But here, how do you express it? Ba'ama, right? And if you don't know why, because you don't know what an amma is. And so what it says its length is 20, corresponds to 20 amot. And its width is 10 amot. So you might tell me, well, hey, we're back to, Sefer Yov. We just have a surface. Well, no, and that's what the Gemara tells you. Because it says, V'chi pashtat la havya la esrim be'esrim. He says, if you unfold it, right? Because this is folded. So if it's folded, if you unfold it, it's not 20 times 10, it's 20 times 20. Urtiv, and now he takes from Sefer Navi Yecheskel, he says, Wehi ketuva panim u'achor, right? And it was on the front and on the back. So in other words, what he tells you?
It's a cube.
No, it is?
Three-dimensional.
Yeah. So he says, Vechi chalfatla, if you peel it, because you have a back and a front, so if you peel it, then this time you have 40 times 20. And that 40 times 20, so you went from 10 times 20 to 20 times 20 times to 40 times 20,
It was
right?
doubly folded, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's on both sides. But you see, what the matter is for you to realize that as we said, what happens here. And what I'm saying now, it's not my little chidush. No. You know who expressed this? The Maharsha. He has a beautiful name, the Maharsha, because anyone that they would go from the east and tell you, I met some type of Maharishi, you tell him, yeah, I have the Maharsha, seriously. So, and so the Maharsha, what is he saying? He's saying this extraordinary thing. He's the one who's saying you really have 4 levels. The original Pardes, the original expression, only that in the way of the Maharsha, it went like this. You had the Pshat, you had the Drash, then you had Maaseh Bereshit, and then Maaseh Merkava. And you had the Pshat, the Drash. It's like jumping directly from Pshat to Drash. And then you had Maaseh Bereshit and Maaseh Merkava. That's the way that they were understanding it. And without the Zohar, we would never have had the idea of the Pardes. And by the way, take this idea of Pshat, Drash, Maaseh Bereshit, Maaseh Merkava, and good luck in finding Pei, Resh, Dalet, Samer inside this. You understand? So, so in other words, they knew that they were about to reach the full idea of it, but it wasn't there yet. Yet, everyone knew that this very Gemara is actually giving you those 4 levels. And now, following my master, what I invite you to do is actually to realize what it means in relation to the actual Pardes as explained by our sages, the sages of Kabbalah. Which is the fact that at the beginning it's only unidimensional. And you know why? It's normal. The Pshat is unidimensional. It's a text with letters one after the other. Then you get to the second level, which is the level of what Moshe Rabbeinu mentioned in Sefer Yov, but didn't exactly define, which is about the vastness of Torah seen in 2 dimensions as a surface. Then you've had the new Navi Yecheskel. And what did he see? He saw that it was this panim v'achor. So there's obviously some type of depth. But then you have this very special expression of Adonai Navi Acharya, who says Megillah Afa. And which our sages here, obviously in the Gemara, understand as meaning that it's not only you have this depth, you had like a 4th dimension that you have a hard time explaining, which is about being folded. But you have another dimension. You would, if you would look at, it's what we would call, a hypersurface in mathematics.
It's like a time surface.
Well, no, because it changes the whole time at time surface, because time changes, time evolves. And here at time, you don't choose where you want to be on time. You see, time flows. So it is a 4th dimension.
And we particularly see that when it talks about the second unfolding into 40
Yes,
to 20.
exactly. That's when it is. That's the matter.
The first unfolding is bringing us.
Well, no. If you look at the ordered book, they work it back from Zechariah back to David. So it's actually that the first one is this 4th dimension that you don't understand. That's the first one that they somehow unfold. And then the second, taking away from the back and the Achor and Panim and Achor, that's about Yechezkel. And so that's about this third dimension that we all somehow know, experience. And then you have the second, which is about from Moshe Rabbeinu and Sefer Yov, and then of David. And it says this. Urtiv, so at that point, what did we reach? We reached the fact that the vastness of Torah is 20 by 80 amot that you could, so you could, by 40, sorry, 20 by 40, so how much is it? 800. So you have 800 divine amot. Because obviously, the amot, of God is not, is not your amot. It's even, even the Marsha agrees with me on that, so don't try to discuss that. That would be like a waste of your time and my time. Anyway, 800 amot. But then the Sugya doesn't end there. The Sugya tells you, it says, Urtiv mi madad b'sha'alo ma'im v'shamayim ba'zeret tiken v'gomer. Adonenu hanavi Yeshaya. Another pasuk in Nevi'im. We're talking about what we'll use in practice. And so what is this pasuk saying? Who measured with his fist the sea? And the heavens with a span he gauged. He also measured. Now, this span is called here zeret. And we actually learn that a zeret is a quarter of an amma. And so what is it that what is it that we're saying here? Is that the heavens altogether measure one divine headspan, called zeret, by a divine headspan, which is a quarter of a divine amma. And so the Gemara, Sugya concludes, Nimtza kol haolam kulo echad mishloshet alafim umata'im b'Torah. The whole entire universe is one part in 3,200 of the Torah.
800 times 4.
Yeah. Because it's like 800 divided by a quarter. So 800 times 4, so 3,200. So in other words, it's just like you have the Lamed Bet Netivot Chochmah, just you have the Lamed Bet Shmot Elokim of Maseh Bereshit. And we are in Olam HaMasiyah, and Olam HaMasiyah corresponds to the Kuf Aik, etc. And so it corresponds to 100 Sod Sandal. And there you reach what? That you have really 32 times 100, 3,200. That is, this universe is just a part in, 3,200, which corresponds to the vastness of Torah. Now, this gave us beautifully the 4 parts. And here's what I suggest would be in actual practice. Respecting this. I think honoring it, if we really do that, is one would have first a riddle. And when we say riddle, it's not for you to dwell on it and ask yourself the question, so what does it mean? Discuss it. No, it's not for you. It's here to break your sechel. It's actually here to cancel your sense of logic. It's, it's what in the East when people would have called a koan. It's here to actually take away from you this sense of superiority that you have with your logic. Forget it. You don't get it, and it's not going to help you. Your sechel is not going to help you. And then what do you take? You take the actual psukim of the Torah that correspond to the day. Shnei mikra ve'echad targum. 2 times the pasuk and 1 time the targum. Shnei mikra in the ideal form, said with Tami Mikra, the Targum just said plain. Then after that, you have the next, so that was the P. Then after that, you have the Resh of Remez. And there we will take a Mishnah. And so you can ask me, well, which Mishnah? Well, here it is. We will take actually in Maseret Eruvin, Kavat Haitim la Torah, corresponding to Seder Moed, so Maseret Eruvin. And we will work our way progressively through this Mishnah and the Gemara which follows, having, as it should be for Lisrael, the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Remez and the Drush, the Remiza and the Drasha, linked. And, well, will this be in coherence with all we learned? Yes, and not only it will be in coherence, but it will lead us to a few pages later. So we'll take it, you can take it like a few days on the same Mishnah, a few days on the same little piece of Gemara that corresponds to that Mishnah. And then that evolves after, as long as you did not reach any other Nevi'im and Ketuvim, which we have from this beautiful expression about expressing the vastness of Torah. Then you would reach some other Nevi'im and Ketuvim that are related to the Gemara, and that you will replace your Nevi'im and Ketuvim inside the Mikra part with those psukim. Till you reach the famous set of riddles that are a few pages later in Maseret Eruvin, which will become back the riddle with which you will start your learning. And then once you've reached that, we'll talk.
But this is something that has been printed out in a format or not yet?
Well, I wish it had. So we will see how to do the edition work.
Has this form of learning Chok Israel been activated by anybody else until now?
By many, many generations of sages in Yeshiva Betel, but the matter is this: each one had his own. You see, because Diari never tells you what Mishnah to take, what Gemara to take, so each one had his own version of what he was taking. In fact, many were doing it on the fly, and that's the ideal version. That it's not even fixed for you, because you see, that's the real level of the mashal given by the Sabbat Mishpatim. You actually get a profound sense of the remazim of Oraita, which is at a level of Tanaic consciousness. You go from there to an Amorai consciousness at the level of the Drush. From there, you actually start, coming to this thinner and thinner veil between Oraita and you, and she starts to even tell you a whole story. She starts to narrate the whole thing to you. And these are like riddles for you, but you relate to them very deeply, and you come to even see her face to face, and she reveals the secrets of Torah. These were the type of sages, Yeshiva Tamikubel and Betel. That's how they were experiencing it. So they were not much about fixing things. They were more about experiencing it. And we see an allusion in the Zohar that actually the way that it was worked, and it was like almost halacha l'maaseh, for such sages, is that as they would do Netilat Yadayim, they would say, "Na latkin seudata adetit yehiv mi b'malka." We will not establish a seuda as not it's not been given by the king, by the house of the king. In other words, as long as wisdom has not been brought down, we are not going to engage with bread. That is not because you've done Netilat Yadayim that you should run and think that you are entitled to eat bread. No. They would wait for wisdom to be drawn down, and then only from the point that they knew that it was there, and that point was the point that they did this whole process of Chok Lisrael. They would say, now that came the time that it was given from the house of the king, from now on we will establish a seuda, and they would say hamutzi. That was the old, that was a very integrated and ideal practice. So, of course, has this been practiced? Of course it has, but it's been practiced in a very high level. I'm just giving you a version which you can actually relate to without sending you on a never-ending contemplation after your Netilat Yadayim before doing Hamotzi and forgetting yourself in the process.
Sounds fun.
It is. That's not fun. In fact, it's the process which is called the story of Choni HaMe'agel, you know, or basically coming to even eat bread and losing it, you know. And it says in the Talmud Bavli, it says that the rocks grew on him. You know, that's what it says. The rocks grew on him and hid him. That's what it is. Okay.
Very good. So you, next week, are we going to have something that we can actually start?
That's depending on what you and I will discuss.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen. Amen.